Yeah, there's a lot of fear-mongering. Is it really as bad, like all the time, as bad as people think? I'm not necessarily sure it is. Late kick, high atop a bustling Ames, Iowa. We are Thursday. We are March 21st, the year of our Lord, 2024. Jam-packed show, as always. We're going to have Matt Campbell on the back half of this show. Sat down with him. A lot to get into on a lot of topics around college football, not just Iowa State. So I don't care if you're a Portland State grad. You'll probably be interested in what he has to say. I'm going to talk, albeit very briefly, about this whole deal with ESPN and the college football playoff. I know a lot of you are interested in it. I'm just forget about things on the periphery. I'm going to try and cut through on it. Got something on Ryan Day. There are a lot of new teams and new conferences this year. Are any of you planning on actually winning those conferences? Or any of you out there looking to bet new teams and new conferences? We'll talk about all of that and more. They're watching us in Des Moines, Iowa, where I spent a night last night. They're watching us in Atlanta, Georgia, Amarillo, Texas. A lot of good behind-the-scenes stuff, guys. We've been on the road. As I said, we were in Missouri 2 days ago, Manhattan, Kansas yesterday, Ames today. We're going to be all over the country at Late Kick Josh if you want a good peek behind the scenes of what it's like at these programs, specifically over on Instagram. I've had a lot of good stuff for you. Okay, let's dive into the show tonight. Forget one of you. A whole bunch of you asked what my thoughts were on ESPN acquiring or extending their acquiring of the exclusive rights to the college football playoff contract through, I think it's like 2031. And there's this kind of boogeyman syndrome in the room where everyone wants to hate on and bash everything that is establishment college football, whether it's the NCAA or whether it's ESPN because they've said something once upon a time you don't like, or there's an on-air talent there that you think is biased against your program, or you just think holistically maybe they're participating in practices behind the scenes that are detrimental to the sport. And look, I'm not saying there's not validity to some of that, but I don't think that we have angels running any kind of angelic media company out there. So at some point you have to bite your own personal bullet for, the greater good. Okay, so that sounds like a bunch of boilerplate stuff. I know. So what I think about it is I wish personally that we had a college football playoff contract that, number one, didn't include 12 teams, but beside the point at this point. So I wish we had a world with the existing and future college football playoff structure where every network had a piece of it. Now, this is my perfect world, and I'm going to get to why that wasn't possible in a second. But I would love for it to kind of mirror what the NFL does. And I'm, as usual, I'm not a big proponent of our sport adopting a lot of what the NFL does. But listen, when it comes to presentation and distribution, there's a lot the NFL gets right. Okay, so I think a lot of you agree with that. Judging by my inbox, a lot of you agree with that. So, okay, well, Josh, why can't we have that? Well, don't ask ESPN. Like, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to look at the one media company that was willing to bid big money on the future of college football and its playoff contract and hate on them when you get behind the scenes and you realize how really uncompetitive that bidding process was. You notice two words you never heard in this whole back and forth and this whole drawn out drama about the college football playoff contract. You never heard the words bidding war. It's like an NFL free agent. Sometimes you hear those words. In recruiting, sometimes we hear those words. We did not hear those words when it came to the college football playoff contract. It's because other networks didn't step up to the plate like ESPN did. Now, it's their money. It's not my money, so I'm not going to sit here and shout from my front porch how you should spend yours or you should spend yours. But look, if it were a competitive marketplace and ESPN had gobbled this thing up, that'd be one thing. Because at that point, I'd look at college football and say, well, what are you guys doing? But when you got ESPN offering, $1.3 billion, I think, a year, and reportedly no one else coming close to that, how am I going to get mad at that? And that's one compartment. The other compartment is, okay, is ESPN contributing behind the scenes to taking away parts of the game you like? Are they contributing to conference realignment and this and that? And I can't say no. I don't think that many people can definitively say that either way. I hear things. I probably hear more things than you guys. You guys are working your jobs every day. You don't have time to be in those weeds. I kind of am. But even then, I'm not in the room. So, I got my feelings on it. You got your beliefs and feelings on it. We all hear hoofbeats off in the distance, but you never really know. And also, if that is happening, there could be things beneath the surface that if you and I knew would make a whole lot more sense as to the way things play out. So, bottom line, we've got an expanded playoff coming. One network owns those rights. It is important to understand there is a sub-licensing clause in there, which just means if I run CBS and I want to buy a first-round game where Pitt is coming to play Iowa State in 2027. I can buy that from ESPN. So it probably will look like that. It probably won't be every game exclusive on ESPN, but they will own all the rights to those games. And that's the way it is. Happy to have you guys with us. Make sure you are subscribed to this YouTube channel and to the pod, and make sure you do both, because there is exclusive content on each platform that you may not get on the other platform. So I had a question about Ryan Day. And someone asked the other day, we were talking about Brian Kelly, and you asked, hey, you've talked about folks hating on Brian Kelly just because he doesn't have a national title. What about Ryan Day? And you actually mentioned the words hot seat with Ryan Day. I'm laughing because that's not the first time, nor is it the last time. You and I will hear that phraseology around the Ohio State head coach, who has been there 5 or 6 years now and has yet to lose double-digit games. Naturally, he's on the hot seat. I think that's BS. So I don't really train headlong into that portion of the narrative. There's another portion, though, that I'm happy to traffic in. Now, as much as I like to push back against unrealistic expectations, I don't think it's unrealistic if you stick the thermometer in the expectation of the average Ohio State fan. You've got radicals on either side, okay, where if you don't go undefeated every year, let's get them out of here, let's find someone else. That is not the norm amongst any fan base, Ohio State included. The norm amongst Ohio State folks is it's totally unacceptable to be losing to Michigan multiple years in a row. It's unacceptable for us to not be a Big Ten champion on average every other year. Now, with an expanded playoff, it's not acceptable that we're not in there every year. Now, these are lofty. Those are extremely, like, rung one, high-level expectations. But when I don't have a problem with it is when you meet the expectation level on your side. So you got a 100-plus thousand seat stadium there. Is it sold out every Saturday? Yeah, it is. Do you get asked to contribute? Do you get asked to open your checkbook and contribute? Yes. Do you? Yes. Is there passion coast to coast for your brand? Yes. Is it represented well from a fan standpoint and engagement standpoint? Is it represented well? Yes, 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 yes. So if you meet all those, you got the right to have high expectation. I don't really care where you are, within reason, you got the right to have high expectation. The other thing is, I'll remind you guys, is we had Ryan Day on the show last spring or summer, and on that show he said, I'm fine with the expectations. And he said it off camera before we brought him on camera. He said, yeah, I may worry about, how my family perceives it every now and then, but folks are free to bang on me all they want to. Doesn't mean it never affects me, but like, folks are free to do that. I get the job I have, is what he said. But what I'd ask, because Ryan Day's not in this room here, like, what I'd ask is just, I'll tell you how I view it. I think he's one of the best in the country and is still very young, relatively speaking, still very new at what he's doing. But he has been there a little while now. Half a decade is not brand new. Like, I mean, the newness has worn off of Ryan Day as a head coach. But I would ask this. Forget about Ryan Day for a second. Just talk generic head coach. Do we all agree it's really hard to win at the highest level, period? I think we mostly agree with that, although some places have advantages others don't have. But having said that, it's hard to win. Number two, do we believe that the role of head coach in college football has evolved drastically over the past 5 years? Now, I would say most of us would nod our heads yes. Okay, so is it not then understandable, again, generically, not talking about a specific guy, that someone in his first years being thrown into that culture, that climate, could struggle to get his footing? And I wouldn't even say Ryan Day struggled. I mean, there are bounces of ball here and there. There's a missed field goal last year at the end of regulation against Georgia. That's probably the difference in me talking about him still trying to prove himself to the same crowd that would be celebrating his name had he won a national championship. And the reality is, in scenario A versus B, there's no difference in Ryan Day, the coach. It's just an outcome-oriented, I guess, vacuum that we live in. So here's the thing. They're going to be favored to win the Big Ten this year. If you nailed me down in March, which you legally do not have the right to do, I would pick them to win the Big Ten this year. Going to be competitive. Don't have to win the Big Ten to get in the playoff, remember, because like half the country gets in the playoff now. But I think really highly of him, and I think there is coming a day, just like there has been now with Kirby, just like there probably will be with Lanning, just like there probably will be with Sark eventually, where the same crowd that says they cannot realizes, oh, it should have just been have not. Because now they have. So how dumb does it look to have kicked Ryan Day off to the side. Now forget about him. 5 years in, doesn't have a national title. Forget about him. Little crazy. I do not participate. Let's move it along. Got Matt Campbell coming up in the show in mere moments, actually. And I think regardless of your affiliation, regardless of what logo is on your respective polo, you're going to want to hear what he had to say. It was really good, really in-depth with the head coach at Iowa State. So we got a lot of new teams and new conferences this year. And a lot of you have been asking, like, is there any team out there joining a conference that you would legitimately pick to win that conference this year? And yeah, the answer may be yes. So starting the SEC, we called Oklahoma the other day one of the most overlooked teams in college football. I mean that because a lot of people are talking about them as teetering on the fringe of like bowl eligibility this year, and they have a very difficult schedule. Everybody in that conference does. But Oklahoma's a team that is a classic, probably byproduct of preview magazine culture, and that is that thing where all you know is who left. All you know is who they lost. Oklahoma lost X number of combined starts, X number of starters on the offensive line. Okay, well, who do they replace him with? Oklahoma fans probably know. And I'm not telling you they replaced him with studs, but if you can't answer the follow-up question, you don't have a well-rounded opinion of the team. And with Oklahoma, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, they've recruited and portaled at a top 10 level. Every cycle Venables has been there. Could it just be they've got some talent that the country doesn't know about yet on that team beyond offensive line that we find out about this year? Not pitching them to you to win the conference per se. Texas could be a different story. Texas has got a lot of portal additions that have to pan out. If they hit it out of the park with their portal additions, they'll be right there in contention. So it'd surprise me if Oklahoma won the conference. It would not surprise me if Texas did, and I don't think that's a bold take at all. Oregon is the second odds-on favorite to win the Big Ten, courtesy of FanDuel right now. So if you're shocked by them potentially going to Indianapolis, 17 time zones away to play in their conference title game and winning it, you're probably not paying attention to roster development, talent acquisition, the odds market. Washington, that's not happening. UCLA, that's not happening. USC, I mean, I'm still a believer in giving Lincoln Riley time with a new philosophy, but if you're shifting philosophy and trying to get tougher as you enter the Big Ten, it's not a recipe necessarily that's conducive to me to you winning a conference title. But if I'm wrong, we've talked about how relatively workable their schedule is, then we'll see. In the Big 12, it's anybody's conference. I'm in Ames, Iowa today. They could win the conference this year. We were at Kansas State yesterday. They could win the conference this year. Arizona, even having lost Jed Fish, they kept a number of big-time pieces on the roster. They could win the conference this year, and they're new. Iowa State's not new. Kansas State's not new, but both the Arizonas are new. Utah is the odds-on favorite to win the conference per FanDuel, and they just got here 5 minutes ago. Colorado's here as well. They're down the odds board a little bit, but, I mean, you've got a couple of teams there in Utah and Arizona that not only would it not be shocking, I'd be surprised if they weren't figuring into the conference title race. And then in the ACC, it's got to be SMU if it's going to be anyone, because you're not about to sell me on Cal or Stanford just yet. SMU, though, a little different now. I know that you haven't seen a team make the G5 to power whatever number it is now jump and be successful right off the bat. They've got a little different caliber player on their roster, so it's not a guarantee of anything. Like Meemaw always said, ingredients in the kitchen do not guarantee a good meal. Lack of ingredients guarantees a terrible meal or starvation. So they do have some ingredients in there. It is the ACC. There's no guarantee of what FSU and Clemson are going to be. Like there's no surefire like Georgia caliber team over there where you can set your watch by them. So the ACC, that'd be interesting though, because if SMU came into the SEC, essentially paying their own way, by the way, or ACC, and they ended up winning the conference or even going to the conference title game, that would be cause for celebration. And you can see all those odds right now over at FanDuel. They are the exclusive odds provider of our show, have been. As I have told you many times, we have scratched the surface of what this show is capable of infusing FanDuel into it. It'll probably, candidly, look really different this year from any other show that you see sportsbook branding on, because I could tell you all day you could go bet at FanDuel. It's a whole nother thing to infuse that into the show. And those were the conditions that we had them meet when we met with them before we entered into an agreement with them. And they're all on board with it. They love it. It's not like they resisted the ideas, but it's going to be really fun. And we're looking forward to that this year with them. also looked forward to getting up here to Iowa State. We sat down with Matt Campbell, head coach of the Cyclones, earlier today. Take a listen to what he had to say. So I'm always fascinated when we start talking recruiting with head coaches. At major programs, there's infinite resources, and maybe like in the South especially, you're focused on, we can put out our list or anyone's list, and you're focused on guys that probably are ready to contribute physically as freshmen. From your perspective, when you're talking more about maybe a guy that is developmental, or you're looking and trying to project not what he's going to be like at 18, but maybe 20 years old, how is that different? And how, when you guys target players and recruit players, like how does that language and approach maybe change?
Yeah, I think for us from day one, we've always said, number one in the recruiting process, we got to find our kind of guys. And I think we know Iowa State, number one, is unique in a different place. I think number two, our process and how we are going to get our young men from 18 to 22 years old and be their best, become that 4- and 5-star player at the end of their career. We've always kind of revolved around the philosophy of our kind of guy. And then, through the recruiting journey, it can't just be, man, what's the highlight tape say? What's the highlight video look like? What's he at his best? We've looked for, number one, character, and I think that football character piece for us has always been really big. And, man, what's it look like on a game video? What's it look like when you're not at your best? And how do you respond to adversity? I think those things have been big for us in the recruiting journey. I think number two, love football. I think our place has always been a place of we're going to be better when we have juniors and seniors than we are when we're a team of freshmen and sophomores. And, you got to love football to stay the course. And I've always said it's really hard in college football to become a senior, especially today in college football. And, finding those guys that love the sport so much that they're willing to grow and develop in things like nutrition and strength and conditioning and, and then the fundamental and craft that it takes to reach your full potential. And then I think the last thing for us has always been understanding the value of academics. We're not pro sports still today. We are a sport where the college piece, the academic piece is still got to be something really important. And those guys have been the guys that have seemed to be able to thrive in our football program. And we've really tried to do our due diligence around those values.
You guys have a team probably coming back this year that a lot of people here are really excited about. I think as we get closer to the season, maybe the whole preview magazine culture will start to catch on to that. Anytime that's happening in this day and age, you're worried about other staffs knowing that and other staffs possibly looking and saying, oh, what's over there? Yeah. And yet, and this is me talking, not you talking, I've looked and I have seen minimal transfer portal talk around Iowa State. And I see a lot of good players here. We've been in the building all day, a lot of good players. What is that balance like? And just when you know that's coming, how do you handle it?
Well, I think the neat thing for us is, it's been great to be somewhere that you have gone through the waves of success and, man, that dip back down and then success again. And so, number one, how do you handle expectations, I think, is really big. And I think that's one thing for us we've had to learn probably the hard way here at Iowa State, but it's been a great learning process. I think number two is the cultural piece has really never changed. And I've always said I want to build a football program where young people and their families feel confident that they can send their young men to our program and they can feel confident and safe in their journey of growth from 18 to 22 years old. And we've never shied away from that. Honestly, even as, our landscape in college football has changed, we've doubled down on culture and we've doubled down on, man, a young man wanting to come here and feel confident to grow from, the beginning part of their journey to the end of their journey within our football program. And a lot of things we can't control outside of us, but I think what we can control inside of us, how we build our program, how we build in and care into our young people in our program, that's been priority number one, and that hasn't changed for us.
Back a couple of years ago, we brought the show up here for the Iowa game early in the year, like 114 degrees that day. And that season had a lot of high expectations. Yeah. And I think it'd be safe to say probably in a lot of ways you felt like you didn't reach the full potential that year. So that would maybe be like an unexpected dip. When you get to the end of the road of a season, and you didn't meet expectation, your internal expectation you didn't meet either, how much is there, hey, we've got to adhere to the process versus how much is there, let's raise the hood, let's look at everything, and yes, we've got core values we're not going to change, but that, and that we got to do something about.
Well, I think whether, no matter what, we've tried to, at the end of every season, raise the hood and have those same questions. And whether you felt like it was a team that reached its full potential or didn't, you have to evaluate the season and be able to self-reflect. It's just like we ask our kids to have no ego in the journey and to be able to self-reflect and figure out where are those gaps that you need to fill in. We have to do it, and that starts with me as the head football coach, and then it goes to our assistant coaches, and then at some point it's got to go back to our players. But if we don't do that, then I don't think our kids can look at us with true trust in who we are and have the ability to say, yeah, you know what, coach is asking me to reevaluate and to be able to fill in my gaps, and he doesn't have the ability to do that. And so I think we've always tried to do that every year, and 21's a great example. You know, it was a year where we didn't reach our full potential, and you know, there's a lot of that. And when you self-reflect, I'm going to be the first one to sit here and say, hey, listen, I didn't do a great job as a head football coach. There's some areas for me that I learned a lot about what I should have done or could have done better, and you know, I've been able to take those lessons and continue to build into the next years into our football program. So again, I think that's one of the great things about being at a place now going into our 9th season is, geez, we've kind of gone in, we've had almost everything thrown our way, and we've been able to experience everything, especially here at Iowa State for the first time. Some of the great successes, man, some dips. And yet, how do you handle that, and how do you move yourself forward? But that ability to self-evaluate, man, that hasn't changed for us. We've really stuck to that. We've made changes almost every year in our program, but the core philosophy, love, care, serve our players, man, create a place where young people feel confident, safe, proud to come into our football program and represent a football program the right way. Those things have really stood true for us, and we're really proud of that.
I think one of the things people would be most fascinated to hear you talk about as much as you can is when you start having some success, especially in your business, your name's always going to be out there. Anytime jobs come open, your name's going to be out there. And the traditional view is, well, if someone's here, it's just an automatic, they'll go there, then there, then there. And sometimes the public's perception of what elevation is matches yours. Other times you have a totally different mentality than what the general public thinks. So the conversation around you has always been, hey, I wonder what Matt Campbell's going to do if. I wonder when Matt Campbell's going to do this. And yet you've been here. And short of like internet rumors, there's never been really serious traction to you not being here. So could you walk people through as much as you can the thought process you have when you have opportunity?
Yeah, you know, I think for me, and again, it's been a fascinating journey for me as a head football coach, because I became a head football coach at 32 years old, you know, and probably wasn't ready. I don't know if any of us are, and you're always growing. And I feel, you know, this is an area even for myself that I feel like I've grown, you know, tremendously over the course of time. And, you know, I've been that guy where it's like, geez, should I be climbing this ladder of job to job at a really young age to, you know, when we got to Iowa State and have been able to build something different. And I know, you know, for me, leaving the University of Toledo was really hard, to be quite honest. You know, from Ohio, my wife and I had never left Ohio at that time, 3 kids with a 4th on the way. We had grandparents and family that were, you know, anchors to us, and it was really hard to leave. And, you know, that was the first time I said, geez, I don't know if this is what I want to do. I want to be able to lay roots and build something different and something that's really special that can stand for something. And I think when Jamie Pollard had come to talk about the Iowa State job, that's kind of what he was looking for, something different, and to build something different and, you know, build it your way, how you envision building a football program. And, you know, I think that's the one gratitude that I have for being the head coach. I walk in here every day and I'm just beyond grateful to be the head football coach at Iowa State. And, you know, we've been able to build a program that I really believe stands for something. And on top of that, as we've had our successes and some of that outside noise has come in, you know, even personally for me, I've always gone back to the checklist of, number one, I wanted to be a great father. I want to be a great husband. I never wanted to, you know, let the profession ruin what's most important to me, and that's my family. And number 2, you want to work for great people and with great people. And, you know, I think I'm really fortunate that, you know, we've got great trust within our athletic department department here, within our administration here, within our coaching staff here. That's been really important, and it's a joy to come in every day and work with people that are aligned to the same vision. And then I think the third part of it, which is probably the most important part, is what do you stand for in this profession? I think for me, it's been, I wanted to build something that allows young people to feel confident and to feel trusted when they come into our football program, that they can go through this profound transition that they're going through in life. 18 years old, leaving home for the first time, getting into this uber competitive environment, and all of a sudden you want that support, you want that trust that your coach is going to be there, that these people are going to be there, and they're building something that's going to support this journey that should change your life forever if it's done correctly. And I think that's something that we've been really proud of, because we've been able to build that kind of football program here. So really, as my own journeys happen, I think defining who are you, what do you want to stand for, and what are the type of people that you want to surround yourself with, and we've been really fortunate to be able to do that here at Iowa State.
A lot of people just noticed Brock Purdy play for Super Bowl, and he was once upon a time the quarterback here. You guys had a kid by the name of Rocco Beck last year who started to attract more and more attention as the season went on. So now you get a full spring with him, you get another summer conditioning circuit with him. What kind of player can he be for you?
Yeah, I think the great thing I love about Rocco, and probably very similar to Brock, to play quarterback at this level, one of the unique traits I really believe you have to have is you got to know who you are as a human being. And for a young 18, 19, 20-year-old to know that, that's really hard. But, Brock had that great trait, and I think as you've watched his success at Iowa State and certainly what he's done in the National Football League, he's never wavered from who he is. And I think that's the unique thing about Rocco is, he's really stepped in from day one on campus. He knew who he was, knows who he is, knows what he stands for. And I think what that's done is it's allowed people to be attracted to him when he steps into that critical leadership position. And, I think Rocco's got such great traits. You see, he's got great arm strength. He's such an accurate thrower of the football. But most importantly, he's got great command of the football team. Our guys, our players believe in Rocco Beck. And it's fun to build a football team around guys like that, man, there's great belief in the human being first, and then all those other traits really come to fruition. And Rocco's got great traits to continue to come to fruition, but we're really proud of who he is.
You've got a kind of unique vantage point on the sport because you are a head coach at a major program. So if someone were to hop on the elevator with you and you got like a minute and a half with them and they said, "Hey, Coach, how you feel about college football overall right now?" What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think our sport is in transition, and I would say it's a very transient time. And, to me, this is a very transformational experience. And so I still would tell people that be wary of transient. And I think when things are in transition, that's really tough. And that's why I feel like for all college football programs, you hope that the foundation of understanding that we're dealing with a very transformational time with 18 to 22-year-olds in such a critical time in their life, that's got to continue to be our priority as so much transition happens around our sport.
Do you ever look at the player experience with all the other noise? Mm-hmm. I mean, people are talking about playoff expansion, media rights deals, NIL portal, and yet at any given point, you've got 4 classes of kids on your roster. They're only going to come through college once. Right. And whatever happens in the future, this is their college experience. Yes. How much time do you spend thinking about that?
Well, I spend a lot of time on that because to me, the number one responsibility that we have in our job, and I do get it, winning football games is important, but still the number one priority is we do have somebody's son. And these are 18 to 22-year-olds that are growing from young man to man in a really critical time in their life. And, I know we put so much into the stock of winning at all costs. But the reality, the cost is 18 to 22-year-olds. And our responsibility is still to grow these young men into men. And so I think finding that balance in our job, but yet also understanding that it is critical. And yes, as transition is happening around us, these young men are living a life right now that is such a transformational time in their life, and our job should be helping them achieve their goals and dreams on and off the field. And so I think for us, it's such a unique balance right now, but I think we can't forget the most important piece of what we're leading, and what we're leading is the young men in our locker room.
If you guys are in spring practice right now,
Yeah.
you've got, as we're recording, you've got practice later today,
Yeah.
actually. And I'm always curious, like when you structure a spring, I know that you want to focus on development, and there are certain buckets you're going to fill every practice, and there are certain buckets you're going to fill every spring. But what are the things, maybe 2 or 3, that you have circled in red Sharpie that there's an ultra serious focus on right now?
Well, I think last year we've kind of realigned ourselves to what our program needs to look like as a football team. You know, things like the competitiveness, things like, you know, taking care of the football, and, you know, the way we play the game. I think we realigned ourselves to those value systems, and now it's building the depth and having absolute clarity for our football team by the time we get out of spring practice of, you know, number one, where are you in your individual journey as a football player? You know, where are your gaps? How do we continue to fill those in so we can be our best team by the time we get to August? I think number two, as coaches, you know, where is our foundational offense, defense, and special team schemes? Where are we at with those? Where are our gaps? And then number three, let's have a collective view of what our football team really looks like. You know, I've said a lot here, players, formations, plays. We'll be our best as a football team in all 3 phases when we know who our players are. We make sure we put good formations around them to identify their strengths, and then call the plays to make sure we're accentuating the strength of our football team. Let's get to the end of spring practice, and let's make sure we know what this football team looks like. So by the time we get to the summer and fall camp, we're making sure our schemes are tailor-made to our players. And so we've been our best here as a football program. We've been able to do that, and I think it's exciting for us because we know we've got some really good football players coming back here. We know we've got a really good foundation. Now we can build in that foundation and make sure we're aligned going forward by the time we get to fall camp.
We've been treated phenomenally here from the entire crew. We appreciate it. Matt Campbell.
Thank you very much.
Happy to have you on.
Yeah, honored. Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Look at that branding. Excellent stuff from the head coach here at Iowa State. We loved being up here. As you can tell, even though we're airing right now and the sun is probably down where you are, probably. We respect our Hawaiian market. We really do. But elsewhere, it's probably dark. We recorded this during the day because I don't know if you guys know this, but Iowa State is literally on the basketball court as we speak, playing in the NCAA tournament. Together we clone. And so we agreed, hey, we'll get this knocked out a little early. They could have opened 3 doors for us today if they had them. And so we appreciate it. We appreciate them working with us. It's always a good problem to have when you're scheduled to come somewhere and then the basketball team makes a run. And so they were accommodating. You know, I have a special place in my heart for Iowa State. So maybe I'll come back to Nashville. Maybe I won't. Who knows? We may just do every show from now on from up here. But we appreciate the folks here. For everyone in our crew on the road and our crew down in Fort Lauderdale, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. We will see you Sunday night. Until then, God bless.